Industrial production means that ingredients undergo complex chemical changes, the implications of which researchers don't fully understand. Time magazine is confusing a lot of people lately with mixed messages about ultra-processed foods. Most recently, they published an article titled, "What if ultra-processed foods aren't as bad as you think?" only to change the title days later. Time retitled the article to, "Why One Dietitian is Speaking Up for Ultra-Processed Foods." As health is getting politicized and chronic diseases are on the rise, it's already difficult for the average person to get quality information about what they should or shouldn't eat. This viral article by Time is a roller coaster that is probably more confusing than it needs to be, but that's why we're going to go over it today. It's peppered with mentions of food apartheid and stigmatization of processed foods, but we'll go over this later too. Spoiler alert, the end of the article basically cites a bunch of studies showing that ultra-processed foods are linked to chronic diseases. We'll talk about what the article mentions, what it doesn't mention, and why we should all be paying attention to what we're putting into our bodies every day. And as always, I'm just a normal person trying to make sense out of this. I highly encourage you to do your own research, and I'm never giving any sort of advice of any kind, other than to do your own research. Annihilate the like button and hit subscribe if you like content like this.
Do it! Do it!
Now, back to the article. The first half of the article is a back and forth between a dietitian named Jessica Wilson and an infectious disease physician named Dr. Chris Van Tulliken. Tulliken did an experiment where he ate mostly processed foods like chips, soda, bagged bread, frozen food, and cereal for 1 month, and Wilson, feeling that media coverage of Tulliken's experiment was over-sensationalized, did an experiment of her own where 80% of her diet was processed for a month. Tulliken noted feeling worse, gaining weight, and crazy hormone levels after his month of eating mostly processed foods, whereas Wilson felt the opposite. She said she had more energy and less anxiety, didn't need as much coffee, and felt more motivated. Her diet consisted of soy chorizo, pre-made tamales, cashew milk yogurt, pre-made pupusas, chicken sausage, and tater tots, and other foods like that. The article asked the question of, how could two people eating the same types of foods have such different experiences? But, as we'll see, defining what is or isn't processed food seems to be the main problem here. To explain why these two people had opposite experiences, the article tries to muddy the waters of what the definition of a processed food is by saying, scientists don't agree on exactly how to define processed foods, and therefore, you end up with a system where gummy bears and canned kidney beans aren't treated so differently. At the end of the day, they're both processed. Let me take a minute to say, if you're a consumer, or in this case I guess a scientist, who can't tell the difference between canned beans and gummy bears, good luck to you. Sincerely, I wish you the best. But seriously, what is this? It doesn't stop there. The article goes on to say, there's limited cause and effect research on how processed foods affect health, and scientists and policymakers have yet to come up with a good way to meaningfully delineate between nutrient-dense foods and nutrient-poor options, to separate the kidney beans from the gummy bears. Can we just take a minute here and just look at some kittens? Now, I'm not a scientist, nor am I a policymaker, but can I make a suggestion? Can we just take a vote to see if maybe nutrient-dense and nutrient-poor are good enough delineations for most consumers to choose what food they want to buy? I honestly got pretty mad when I read this part of the article. I think that if you show a person a bag of candy and a can of beans and ask them, which of these two foods are more nutritious? They'll choose the beans. Hopefully every time. Right? Right? What you need to know is that the end of the article is packed with the information that you came for. A short list of previous scientific experiments showing that ultra-processed foods are linked with chronic illnesses, and that maybe, just maybe, we shouldn't eat too much of them. Honestly, from a scientific perspective, the two N-of-1 anecdotes of Wilson and Tulliken that the article goes over in the introduction don't mean anything. The quality of evidence of the studies they cite isn't even the greatest because, like they mentioned earlier, there's limited cause and effect research on how processed foods affect health. And this is because it's insanely expensive and unethical to run cause and effect studies on humans. Like, imagine you volunteer for a study and you get put in the group that gets fed all the shit that will give you diseases or worse. The article posits what exactly in ultra-processed foods could possibly be contributing to chronic illness. Is it the combination of ingredients? Is there a problematic ingredient or additive? I did a quick Control F to find that neither preservative nor hyperpalatable were mentioned once in the article. They did, however, mention emulsifiers. Maybe some of these have to do with it? Maybe? And in terms of food apartheid and stigmatizing ultra-processed foods, which are often the only foods that marginalized people can afford, I'm gonna leave this up to you in the comments, but do you think that we should continue eating the amounts of ultra-processed foods as we do today? Or do you think that subsidies might be keeping processed foods artificially low, and we should work out some sort of system or programs to make whole foods more accessible or affordable? Do you think community gardens, farms, or farmers markets might be able to make nutrient-dense foods available to marginalized communities? Like, imagine if local farmers were subsidized in or near those communities. What do you think? Is any of this possible? Should we include ultra-processed foods in our diet, or are they harmful? To me, this sentence from the article told me all that I need to know to help me choose what to put into my body. Industrial production means that ingredients undergo complex chemical changes, the implications of which researchers don't fully understand. What will you put in your body? Honestly though, props to Time for putting out this article. It could have been incredibly biased and one-sided, but including the studies towards the end balanced it out. Changing the title, on the other hand, what do you guys think about that? Thank you all for watching. Take care.